This morning we are in section number 4, lesson number 2 of spiritual success or distress. The title of our lesson is We Use, We Do Not Own. And it talks here about materialisticness, being those who have the idea or the concept that the things that are in the world are of ultimate importance. And truly, we need things, and that's a reality. But to allow them to dictate our lives is what gets us into jeopardy. You know, it's nice to be able to come this morning in such nice, cool weather and have an automobile to do so. Now, I enjoy that. Now, can you imagine getting up and having to go out and harness up a couple old horses to get here? Or get out there and put a saddle on an old horse and have to kick him in the sides so he'll pull in that air so you can get the cinch pulled up, Yeah, and now the horse is pretty warm. I will give it that. But I sure did like going out there and starting the pickup about 10 minutes before we went and got in it. And by the time we got down to the creek, it was warmed up in the pickup. And by the time we got probably about halfway down 44, Linda was over cranking it down, said, "It's too hot." I enjoyed that. I really did. But there again, as it noted in our lesson, it talks about materialism and it being that which defines us. And as Christians, we understand that materialism is not that which defines us, but it's the blessings that God has bestowed on us. I'm going to dig out my old spectacles here and see if that keeps me from struggling a little bit this morning. It notes here, it says, "Am I materialistic?" And it notes that Christians probably wouldn't make that assumption of being materialistic, even though whenever we look at our situation, that sometimes we do lack a lot of things. And, the kids, every time they come by and they see all those material things that we have stacked up in the barn, they said, "Boy, we sure wish you get rid of this before you're gone." And we can all probably relate to that since our parents and so on have passed and we got to go through all their blessings. And sometimes the deal is that for me, I don't keep things. Well, I do keep some sentimental things, but mostly I keep things that I might need them later. Now, I know people come along here not many years ago into this idea that, if you've got something and you haven't used it in 30 days, you need to throw it away. No, because I might need that in 2 or 3 years, and then I'll get to the point that I need it. Guess what? Can't find it. I keep telling it, "Well, it's out in the barn somewhere, darling. It's out there. I know it is." And or it's in the house here. "Do you know where that's at, Linda?" Linda has a pat answer for when I ask that question. "Well, I seen that not too long ago, but I don't know where it is right now." Oh man! And then what do? You go buy another. That's it. No, we can't do. A lot of times I won't go buy another, and I'll just do something different. But materialism, as we note here, it says to the Christian, the word describes an evil condition, and it is whenever the things of this world overtake us and they become more important. Christians, the next heading there says Christians tend to be more comfortable during declaring that materialism is not. And it's not materialistic to have things, and that's true. We need things to function in this world, to do the things that we need. It also notes under that heading that being poor for poverty's sake is not a virtue. Now, there are some people that would denote being poor as a virtue. I would suspect that for those individuals, that's something they need to think about. It also notes enjoying a good standard of living is not materialistic, and I would agree with that. Having the blessings that God has bestowed upon us to take care of our needs, making preparation to retire without financial anxiety is not materialistic. We could probably stop on that one and have a long discussion since we're all about that age or in that age or been there or doing that. It seems to me, now I shouldn't be chasing rabbits, and Linda will get after me about that, but it seems to me whenever you get older that there's always somebody wanting to poke their finger in your pie and get a big handful. That's what aggravates me, and I will not enumerate some of those places like the prescription industry. Anyway, I won't get into that this morning. Our next heading says Christians prefer to ignore materialism. And I don't know that we have the dependence on the things that we have. It depends on our minds, our hearts, our attitudes, and our devotion of the person. I can only speak for myself. All the things I have are the blessings that God has bestowed on me. And that's the concept that we as Christians should have. But now, there's a lot of people that don't have that idea. They have that idea, as we see here, materialism is an attitude. Attitude 1. I own and control my possessions. They are mine. I worked hard to obtain them. They are not a gift. They're mine. I got them. And I would suggest that there are individuals in our society today, you could probably leave out the worked hard because they just expect someone to give them the things that they desire and the things that they want. Attitude number 2 on your handout says, I love what I have. My possessions are more valuable, important things in my life. I define me by what I possess. Well, if I define myself by what I possess, it would be pretty sad. Because most of my stuff's either old, wore out, or just a bunch of junk that does need to be hauled off someplace. Maybe that does define me. I don't know. Attitude number 3. I want what you have. My life would be wonderful and easy if we swap places. All my problems would be or could be and would be solved if I had money and possessions. Well, how many people do we run into with that attitude? My life is so bad, and if I just had a lot of money, then I would be okay.
That's what a lot of, with all these casinos growing up, a lot of people do that. They say, well, if I could just win it big.
If I could just win it big.
They don't understand or comprehend how much they lose.
No.
To get one, and chances are they ain't gonna get it.
That's it. That's kind of like, if you're playing the lottery or something like that. Since you brought that up, I'll chase that. I'm a rabbit chasing this morning. Y'all got to watch out. It's been one of them days. So many individuals that I know, when they started opening those that were on Social Security, they'd take their whole Social Security check and go to the casino. And they would come out of the casino with nothing. And then they would be sitting around saying, well, how am I going to buy groceries? How am I going to buy my medicine? And I'm going to tell you, as all of us here know, that Social Security check is a penance. Half the time it won't even purchase your medicine that you're on. But people go to those things and they just keep going and keep going and keep going and giving them their Social Security check. And they come out in a bind. They get behind on their bills. They get behind on everything. But guess what? The casino's not. They're doing real well. I remember whenever they first started opening those up over in central Oklahoma, we lived over that direction. And the first time I went in the gas station, there was one of those one-armed bandits in there. I looked at that and I said, what in the world? And then next thing you know, the gas station adds on so they put in more one-armed bandits. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Well, why? Because they're making money on those things. And people's in there just a getting after it, and I'm thinking, why would you do that? And I've told you guys many times, there was a fella back in the day told me never bet on anything but a sure thing. And his name was Thomas Preston. And he's passed. He's no longer with us. But Thomas told me one time, never bet on anything but a sure thing. And in my life, I've only found one sure thing. And that's Christ Jesus, my Lord. That's the only thing I've ever seen. And he was a professional gambler now. So I took that little bit of wisdom that he departed to me, and I've held on to it all of my life. But again, if I can just make it big, I'll be okay. Well, look at the people who are very wealthy. Are they happy? They're still chasing the almighty dollar. They destroy themselves. They destroy their families. They destroy everybody around them. And, we think about the elites in our world. What are they trying to do? They're trying to control and delete everybody else. It's just sad. Now, that does not negate the need to have enough. And I've always told Linda, I'd like to have enough just to get by. And I've seen several people last year, right there at the end of the year. It was probably about, it was right after the 25th. They said, I think I've got enough money to make it the rest of the year. It might have been on the 30th or 31st. I don't know. Anyway, they thought they might be able to make it till next year. Well, after next year comes, who knows? Anyway, continuing with our outline, it says materialism is a perspective. Everything real exists in this world, in this life. Only real, this world would provide human security. The poor have no security. That would be the perspective. Wealth provides power, opportunity, and a means to create your own security. Well, poverty makes you powerless. Poverty makes you a victim. How many times have we heard that? I'd be a whole lot better person or I'd be in a whole lot better situation if I wasn't poor, or if I had more. Also, it notes here, placing hope for security in God, they believe is foolish, wishful thinking. But the thing about it is that that's the only place in reality that we have security. And I think I really do. I think about those people over in Asia Minor, 7 churches. Those people had it rough, and the only security they had in their situation was Christ, our Lord. It notes here materialism is love. Materialism loves things and uses people. People are valuable only when they help me achieve my goals and objectives. In other words, people are only to be used. I value only those people that benefit me. doesn't matter whether it's family members or those that might be our close friends. If they're not profitable to me, uh, I just get rid of them. And that is a primary business model in our world today. If you are not uh, valuable to the individual or the company or whatever, they will cast you aside. It's also that which is being promoted diligently within the confines of society. I I was a little surprised, but not really, that if I get ill, well, I am ill, but if one has a terrible disease that one is suffering, there are, I think they said it, 9 states that you can do end of life, and they will help you kill yourself. And in our northern neighboring country, there's sometimes they don't even ask you; they just put you down. You know, we used to do that to the dog, but that's what they're doing to humans today. You're not um, valuable in their eyes, to them or society. And I number one, it's very sad, and I do not believe, I haven't really done an in-depth study that would even be biblical. The next heading notes that materialism concerns a value system, my priorities, my motivations, my perspective, my attitude, and my heart. The thing about it is that the way we look at the things that we have in the world are important. We need them. I mean, like I said, I'm thankful that we all had a vehicle to get here in. I'm thankful that we have a house. I'm thankful that we have some heat. Boy, last night was sure nice to have a little bit of heat. Some of us will end up going in after a while to this afternoon and putting another log on the fire. I'm thankful that I got some logs out in the back. Linda needs to get another rick or two, so I'm gonna send her out with the chainsaw. Man, I'm thankful we got a chainsaw. I've chopped wood and I've cut wood with one of them old bow saws. Forget that. That's tough. So we need things, but not make it the totality of our life. Let's look at Luke chapter 12. Let's look at Luke chapter 12. We'll start down there in verse 13. That's on our questions. It says, what situation and request created the occasion for this parable? Verse 13. It says, someone in the crowd said to him, Teacher, tell my brother to divide the family inheritance with me. Well, in essence, the brother wanted his part of the inheritance. Now, under the law, back in those days when this was written, the older son would receive a double portion and all the rest would receive a single portion. So if there were, say, 3 in the family, the oldest son would receive the double portion and the younger ones would receive a single portion. I really personally think that's a great idea. The problem is my folks didn't have anything, which was fine. I told my parents many years ago, and I told Linda's parents many years ago, whatever you have, you use it for you. Don't worry about leaving it for me, because I'll take care of myself. God's going to take care of us. You take care of you. And that's kind of the way they did, I think. They kind of took care of themselves. Number 2 says Jesus used 2 approaches to answer the man. And we see that in verse 14. He says, but he said to him, Man, who appointed me a judge and arbitrator over you? Jesus couldn't figure out why this individual was bringing such a concern to him. So he says, who appointed me a judge? And then he focused on the problem, which the basic problem was in verse 15, greed. Number 3 says, what warning did Jesus give his audience in verse 15? Verse 15 says, then he said to them, beware and be on your guard against every form of greed, for not even when one has an abundance does his life consist of possessions. Well, greed's denoted as desirous of what someone else has. I want more. Now, is there anything wrong with earning more? No, not a thing. Is there anything wrong with having more? No. But when it comes to the point of greed, that's when it is that I am envious of someone else, or I use others to obtain what I desire. And the me, becomes the struggle and the difficulty. In verse 15, he also notes the meaning of their life is the latter part there, for not even when one has an abundance does his life consist of possessions. Our life is not measured by the possessions that we have. I guarantee you, all those things that we have, all those things that's out there in the barn, well, I keep trying to tell my kids that's their inheritance, and they keep saying, no. And I told them the other day, I really did. I told them, I said, now I've been cleaning out the barn. I got about a 4-foot square out there that I've got cleaned out. And it was old newspapers. I cleaned out all those old newspapers over there in that corner. And the only reason it was because I needed BTUs. I rolled them newspapers up, put them in the fireplace. So it's a need fulfilled. And what was the date on some of those? Do you remember? It was before COVID. Yeah, like that 2018. I'd stacked them in there, but I'm still using those BTUs now. But I'm cleaning out the barn. I'm getting there. So he says, beware and be on guard for every form of greed, whatever it may be. Be careful of that and don't allow it to overtake your life. That is a key factor here. In number 5, it says, remember this was an agricultural society. Describe the harvest of the rich man, and this is the parable that Jesus utilized to explain to this individual that the things of this world were not all that important. In verse 16 it says, and he told him a parable saying, the land of the rich man was very productive. And again, he was blessed with a record crop. I mean, he had everything he needed. Everything was good. And here, I think this year we probably had one of the better cotton crops that we've seen in this area. What was it that they ginned up at Burns Flat about? It was, I don't know, 100,000 bales, something like that. That's a lot of cotton, folks. Of course, we don't have as many gins as we used to. We used to have 2 in every town. But everybody made good, and cotton's got a good price in the whole 9 yards. So there's nothing wrong with being blessed. It's how we utilize the blessings. And that's kind of what he's talking about here. Look, it's good to have a productive year and to have those blessings, because where's those blessings come from? They come from God. Who gave us such a great cotton crop this year? God did. Well, how many people could you run across and say, well, I did because I planted the right seed and I had the right chemicals to put on it and I had the right fertilizer and I plowed it just perfectly. It was all me. But in reality, it's God. We just utilize what God has blessed us with to plant all that stuff, to put it in. I tell you what, I'm so thankful that the guys that put in our cotton crop didn't have to do it with a horse and a plow and put it in that way. And I'm really glad that these new pickers, I love these new pickers, 700,000 plus a piece. Yeah, but man, they're great. They pick that cotton, they roll it up at a big roll that weighs about 4,000 to 5,000 pounds and dumps it off. And I never had to pick cotton. Some of you guys have. Linda's a cotton picker. Now that's just true. When she was little bitty, but I've stripped a little cotton, and that's a chore. It's a lot of work. But God's blessed us with equipment and everything to have these great harvests. This man had a great harvest. In number 6, it says, "What problem did the record harvest create for the man?" Verse 17. "And he began reasoning to himself, saying, What shall I do, since I have no place to store my crops?" I mean, it was coming out the top. He had no more barns to store all of his crop. There was no place to put it. And, we've seen wheat crops like that, where it would get full at the elevator, and they'd put it in them big old long white containers. I don't know what you call those things. They're plastic bag looking things. Yeah, big old things. But I've also seen them piled up in the middle of the street. But what am I going to do with this? Well, here was the struggle. His solution is in verse 18. This is number 7. "Then he said, This is what I will do. I will tear down my barns and build larger ones, and there I will store all my grain and all my goods. I'm going to build bigger and better. And I am going to store." Think about the word store. He's going to keep it for himself. Well, in verse 19, number 8, it says, "What did the rich man say to himself?" What is your understanding of the rich man talking to his soul? Verse 19, "And I will say to my soul, Soul, you have many goods laid up for many years to come. Take your ease, eat, drink, and be merry." Well, he's going to tear down the barns that he has. He's going to build some new, bigger ones. And there's nothing wrong with growth. If you have a good harvest and you need bigger barns, that's nothing wrong with growth. But the key factor was to keep it for whom? Himself. Yeah, this is mine. And he says, so I'm going to have these goods laid up. I'm just going to take it easy. Not going to worry about it. Might not even plant a crop next year. Don't have to. Well, in number 9, it said God called the man a fool. This is verse 20. "But God said to him, You fool, this very night your soul is required of you, and now who will own what you have prepared?" Yeah, because he was going, wasn't he? He was going to leave it all behind. When we come into this world, we don't come in with anything. When we leave, we're going to leave with nothing. And the idea that there's a hearse with a U-Haul behind it is a farce. That don't happen. You're not going to take it with you. So the blessings that God gives us in this world are the blessings that we utilize. Now look at verse 21. This is number 10. It says, what was the problem? It says, so is the man who stores up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God. Well, that kind of brings us back to the idea of allowing the things of the world, materialism, to dictate our existence and our lives. And that's what gets us into jeopardy. and whenever we abuse others to receive those things. And that's just a reality of life. I let's look in. All you got to do is look across the world, and you see people that have lots of material things, a lot of money. They're not happy. They're always looking to see who they can get something else from, and they don't like the consequences when it comes back. Now, I'm not going to say that this guy being his soul would be required of him, which means he was going to die. That's a good thing or a bad thing, depending on one's situation. But how many people, whenever they don't have, whenever that dries up, they go berserk? We see that in our world right now. Whenever the money dries up, whenever the way that we're getting our money dries up, people don't like it. And they rebel against that reality. They don't like the consequences of their actions. And I'm going to let you guys read the rest of this and go look at Deuteronomy 15. I think that's very important for y'all to read that. I don't want to carry it over. But the things that we have come from God. And we need to, when we realize that, we have security. When we realize that the blessings that we have really don't belong to us, they belong to Him. We don't fret so much about it. And it's kind of like the idea of something that you had is gone, disappears or whatever. It's just stuff. Now, can you tell me one thing in this world that cannot be replaced in some fashion or form? Not really. Now, I would hate, to have a fire at the house and lose everything that we own. But seriously, what's in our house that cannot be replaced? Nothing. But yet it's traumatic to go through such a situation. So let's not worry so much about the things in the world. And again, be rich toward God. Where your treasure is, your heart will be also. And that denotes either in the world or with God. I'm kind of looking for that heavenly abode thing. That's kind of what I'm looking for. So we'll look at another lesson next Lord's Day if He is willing.